Hitanshu Vyas, and we are here for the revision of paper 3, Cost and Management Accounting, a 100 marks paper. The topic of this video is employee cost and direct expenses. Now, a topic which is like this has a very good chance of appearing in the paper. Small questions, as you would remember. But then before moving on to the questions, we need to move to see some notes, and then we can move towards the questions. So these are the notes that we are looking at right in front of you. The first point that we need to understand is the objective of this chapter. What is the objective of this chapter? It is to calculate basic wages, that is, or rather shall I say wages of the worker, which will include basic wages, bonus, overtime, etc. etc. I totally agree that there are multiple types of questions in this chapter. I don't deny their presence, but then at the same point of time, still the major objective of this chapter is to calculate wages of the worker. Let me tell you one thing, my dear friends. Earlier, the name of this chapter used to be labor cost control. Now the name of the chapter has changed, no doubt about that, but still the essence of the chapter remains the same. That is, it relates to calculation of wages of the worker. Next point is something which all of us have studied in cost sheet as well, direct labor, indirect labor. We know that very well. But now we move on to idle time. Two types of idle time that we are considering over here: normal idle time, abnormal idle time. What is normal idle time? Normal idle time is something that you are bound to waste. You can't do anything, you can't control it. The best example, in my humble opinion, of this normal idle time is lunch time, tea time of the worker, of course. Now these remains the examples. Abnormal idle time is an unplanned waste of time. I repeat that once again. Abnormal idle time is an unplanned waste of time. The reason could be breakdown of machines, stock out, or even lockouts for that matter. We losing the electricity in between of the work going on. These are few of the reasons why abnormal idle time happens. Now we move on to few of the most important concepts for solving this chapter. Guys, please concentrate. I humbly request all of you to concentrate, please. Time allowed. What is time allowed? It is the time which is allowed by the management to the worker to produce one unit. I repeat that once again. It is the time which is allowed by the management to the worker to produce one unit. For example, management says to the worker that you produce one unit in 12 minutes. Then 12 minutes becomes time allowed for one unit. Wait. Time allowed can also be called as standard time, and in this case, one unit can also be called as standard output. A very important point to note is that time allowed must include normal idle time. It's natural, isn't it? I mean, workers are bound to take lunch, so you need to allow them time accordingly. I'm sure you understand the point which I'm trying to portray to you. Next, time taken. What is time taken? It is the time which is taken in reality by the worker to produce one unit. Like for example, your worker takes 15 minutes to produce one unit. So 15 minutes will be known as time taken. In other words, it is known as actual time. And now, my dear friends, we move on to concept of efficiency. A large chunk of this chapter depends upon this concept itself. I'll just swipe it up, bring that in front of you, my dear friends, and please concentrate. What do you mean by efficiency? In simple words, efficiency means that the worker has done something better than what he was supposed to do. That is for this chapter. I would like to take that as a meaning. Now, for example, the example is printed. So you just listen to me. It's all printed over there. You listen to me. Let's say a worker is asked to produce 60 units in 10 hours. Now, if he takes less time for producing 60 units, he is efficient. If he produces more units in 10 hours, still he is efficient. So efficiency can be checked in both ways. Either he saves some time or he produces extra. When he saves time, his efficiency is measured in terms of time saved. And when he produces extra, his efficiency can be measured in terms of excess production. Let us understand both of them step by step. You can see the example, and that example actually gives me an opportunity to tell you that this chapter is a chapter of terms as well. Various terms are included in this chapter. We got to learn all of them. I've mentioned them in my example, so don't worry about that as well. Let's say a worker is allowed to produce 12 minutes to produce 1 unit. He produces 300 units in 48 hours. Now we are supposed to calculate time saved. Let us start putting the terms here. First term we come across 12 minutes. We can call it as time allowed for 1 unit. 1 unit, it is standard production in 12 minutes. 300 units, actual production, obviously. And 48 hours, it is the time taken for actual production. Now, I want to find out how much time worker has saved. So, what will I do? Very simple. A worker was allowed 12 minutes to produce 1 unit. He has produced 300 units. I will find out how much time he should have taken, which becomes basically time allowed. How much time he should have taken, in how much time he should have produced 300 units. I do a cross multiplication. I get the answer as 60 hours, which means he should have taken 60 hours. He has taken 48 hours. He saved 12 hours. Simple. A very simple example. I'll move on to next example and then I'll analyze both of them. Please listen to me carefully. Excess production. Let's say a worker was supposed to produce 16,800 units in 28 days. 16,800 units in 28 days. But in reality, he works for 25 days and he produces 21,000 units. My point, pretty simple to all of you, that I cannot compare 16,800 units with 21,000 units because this was for 28 days and this was for 25 days. So, again, a simple cross multiplication. I want to find out how much worker has extra. So, I'll find out two things. One, how much he should have produced, how much he has produced. Then difference will be excess production. How much he should have produced? He should have produced 16,800, but in 28 days. He has worked for 25 days. So how much he should have produced in 25 days? We do a cross multiplication. We come to know that he should have produced 15,000 units. And he does produce 21,000 units. He was supposed to produce 15, he produced 21, he produced 6,000 extra. And that, my dear friends, is the excess production. It's something so simple, and the moment, we remove all these technical terms just in case, obviously you got to use that from exam purpose, but I'm sure you'll understand that the moment I remove these technical terms, this problems becomes very simple. But then we have no choice but to use technical terms. So this is how we will proceed. Now the analysis is pretty simple. First example, we calculated time saved. Time saved is a mere calculated figure. We require two variables, time allowed and time taken. Both must be for actual production. Whereas for example B, we calculated excess production. Excess production is again nothing else but a calculated figure. We require two variables, standard production, which means something which he should have produced, as against actual production, something which he has produced. But both must be in actual time. In simple words, data must be made comparable. In the first example and in the second example, we made the data comparable. In the first example, we made the data comparable on the basis of actual production. In second example, we made the data comparable on the basis of actual time. That is actual number of days. That is second example. So this is what you need to understand. When you calculate efficiency of the worker, the data must be made comparable, otherwise the efficiency can't be calculated. The analysis is printed, coming up right now. Analysis is right in front of your screen, my dear friends. Okay, and as you can see the conclusion in very bold letters: to calculate efficiency, data must be made comparable. Now, I move on to the concept of efficiency ratio. Now, my dear friends, please try to understand. Efficiency, we just said, that can be calculated in two different ways: production and time. Now, try to understand this scenario. A worker was supposed to produce English standard production 800 units. A worker has produced 1000 units actual production. Now, standard efficiency ratio is 100%. Wait. What does that mean? He was supposed to produce 800. He actually produced 1000. Standard efficiency ratio is 100%. What does that mean? If he was supposed to produce 800, he does produce 800. His efficiency ratio is 100%. Now, try to understand, my dear friends. Try to understand. Here he has produced more than what he was supposed to. Naturally, will be more. Naturally, his ratio will be more than 100, and hence I have to do 1000 upon 800 into 100. And my dear friends, actual production is 1000, 800 is standard production. So that's how I created the formula: actual production upon standard production into 100. Now let us talk about efficiency ratio based on time. Again, standard ratio is 100%, but here what are the details given? Standard time is 10 minutes, actual time is 8 minutes. What does that mean? He was supposed to take 10 minutes, he took 8 minutes. Even this worker is efficient. Even his efficiency ratio will be more than 100, my dear friends. Even his efficiency ratio will be more than 100. So now, how to get that more than 100? Only if I do 10 upon 8 into 100, I can get the efficiency ratio as more than 100. 10 was standard time, 8 was standard time upon actual time into 100. And you might feel confused right away that, how is this possible? In first formula he did actual upon standard, now he is doing standard upon actual. You are forgetting, my dear friends. First formula was about production. Second formula is about time. In production, if you produce more, efficient. In time, if you take less time, you are efficient. That's why the criteria of efficiency is different. So naturally the formula is different. I'm sure you understood my humble point at this stage. Now after that we go on to something pretty simple: how to calculate total wages. That is basic wages plus bonus. Generally that's how we calculate. And effective rate per hour. We know all these formulas. I'm not denying your knowledge or the revision that you have done so far, but then again, since we are doing revision, I need to remind you of all this again. So my dear friends, effective rate per hour is total wages upon time taken. Two payment systems we all know by now. It is time rate system and piece rate system. And the time rate system, how do we calculate basic wages? It is time taken into rate per hour. Two bonus systems under the time rate system, generally they are known as premium bonus systems as well. Healthy system formula is 50% of time saved into rate per hour. Row 1 premium system is time saved upon time allowed into basic wages. Then we go to piece rate system, where the wages are calculated as actual production into rate per unit, whereas the rate per unit, if at all not given in the question, then you can calculate by doing it as rate per hour upon standard output per hour. These are the formulas. Naturally, being revision, we are sticking to the formulas at present. Now, last I go to concept of minimum wages. What is minimum wages? A worker will be guaranteed this much wages for specific period. Generally, minimum wages are time basis wages. So, how do we calculate wages? Wages is equal to number of hours into rate per hour. Now, usually what happens, usually, I repeat the word usually. Question can give you anything at any time. That's a different thing altogether. Usually what happens? A worker who is offered minimum wages is also usually offered some sort of incentive plan. So what do we do? Simple. We calculate step by step. First step, we calculate minimum wages. Second step, we calculate the incentive, that is plan wages, and then whichever is high will be paid. So my dear friend, this is practically total theory. There might be some additional points while solving the questions we may come across, but this is practically the total theory of this particular chapter. Now we move on to questions. Now, as I just said, we got to go to the questions. We'll go to the questions, and for that I need to get the textbook in front of you. Give me 1 minute. The textbook is right in front of you, my dear friends. I will touch up every problem's important point and then I will go further. Okay. Remember one thing, most of the problems in this chapter are small ones, but I repeat, most of the problems. Some of them can be big enough, that's okay. First problem, pretty simple problem as such. We were given time allowed and we were given time allowed for 40 units per hour. We are given that very clearly. Here it is. The point that I would like to remind you in this problem, we need to ignore the work allotted. This has no meaning throughout the question. But otherwise, it was a very simple problem. We calculated time allowed for actual production, time taken for actual production, and then time saved and HEL 01, etc., etc. That is what we are supposed to do in this problem. Next, second problem, two workmen A and B. We are given normal rate, we are given to calculate, should I use the words normal rate of wages, the cost of material, and so on and so forth. The point that I would like to remind you in this problem, that this problem we used to do two things. One, factory cost, which is material plus labor plus overheads. Do not fall prey to a mistake wherein considering this as wage rate. This is an overheads rate. That is something where some people make a mistake of. I hope you will not do that. And then we were supposed to create simultaneous equations in this particular questions. With that, this problem used to become very simple and we used to solve that. But remember that third problem, it looked big, it was big, I don't deny, but a very simple problem as such. Let me remind you something. We first had to calculate time allowed, so that naturally we can calculate time saved, obviously, and then we can calculate bonus under whatever systems that was prevailing. Now, presently workers are being paid as per HEL-C. So, what we were basically told in the question, correct rate was 50, incorrect rate was 55. And the first required part tells us that we need to find out the loss incurred. Because why? Because the accountant had paid presently as per incorrect rate of 55. So naturally presently it is HEL-C. So we will calculate wages under HEL-C and correct incorrect wages under HEL-C. Second required part spoke about correct and incorrect wages under RO1. How much loss you will suffer. So we will follow RO1. Third required part spoke about whether RO1 scheme of bonus payment is to be followed, and fourth required part spoke about that whether the bonus payment system of RO1 is suitable for JBL or not. So basically what we did throughout the problem is that we calculated correct, incorrect, correct, incorrect, correct, incorrect wages under HEL-C RO1, and then we proceeded further. Big problem, but a problem did not have too much essence to go ahead about. So with that, I finished my discussion of question number 3. Now, I come to question number 4. Fourth question actually gave us the proof where HELSI and rho 1 as a bonus system will give same bonus. We did a small proof and we came to realize that the HELSI and rho 1 will give us same bonus when time taken is 50% of time allowed. That was about it, my dear friends. That was the point in fourth question. But then in question 4b, we were given time allowed 8 hours, hourly rate, that is nothing else but rate per hour, and we were given this term, each hour saved progressively. What does that mean? That means that whenever worker will do the same work again, he will save one more hour. Whenever worker will do the same work again, he will save one more hour. And that, my dear friends, prompted us to create 7 columns to do this calculation, wherein we keep on calculating basic wages, HELSI bonus, rho 1 bonus, total wages, and effective rate per hour. My dear friends, please remember, it was an implied preparation of 7 columns. Don't forget that in this particular problem. A very important problem in my humble opinion, because it involves some implications. Moving on to question number 5. Well, the moment you saw the question number 5 for the first time, I hope you will recollect, you were wondering there is not a single figure. And then you realize that you either have to take your own example or take fourth question as base and understand multiple things. Both ways were possible. You might have studied with either ways, but I mean a separate example might have been taken or a fourth problem might have been taken as a base. You have to do this, and of course it's a theoretical question, I agree, it proves certain points, but in my opinion, please do not forget a very important point. In this question, you were supposed to find out which system fulfills these 3 conditions, and not system is better than the other. Don't forget that, otherwise the answer could be totally different. I mean, no, you might move into a totally different direction than what is required. That is question number 5. Let us discuss question number 6 now. See, multiple details were given in question number 6, like for example, 60 direct workers, 400 as wages per week of 40 hours. Overtime is worked up to a maximum of 15 hours per week per worker at time rate plus 1/2 as premium. Don't worry, 1/2 is not something else, it's just half. See, it's basically like this, 1/2 and other half. That's what we say, isn't it? 1/2 and other half. That 1/2 means half. So don't worry about that. Next, current output is 6 units per man hour, whereas if bonus scheme is introduced, expected to increase to 8 units per man hour. Workers will continue to work overtime. That's a separate point. That's a good point. Fair enough. Budgeted weekly output is 19,200 units. Selling price is 11 per unit. Material cost is 8 per unit. Variable overheads amount to 0.5 per direct labor hour, and fixed overheads is 9,000 per week. So, what are the points to remember or points to think about in this question? Very simple point. The idea was most important that we will have to create cost structure and of course compare it with sales under 3 situations: present, HELSI and rho 1. All 3, I agree. But then if there is no scheme, then budgeted output is 6 per man hour, 6 units per man hour to be precise. Whereas if there is scheme, then the budgeted output is 8 units per man hour. So now what happens because of that? Because of that, earlier, I'm reminding you the amounts. Earlier, when there was 6 units per hour, what used to happen is that the work would get finished in 3,200 hours. Whereas under the present situation, when it shifts to 8 units per man hour, work will get over in 2400 hours. So 800 hours which were earlier required will no more be required. That means automatically it becomes time saved. I repeat, automatically it becomes time saved. But then the work is getting completed in 2400 hours. Work is getting completed in 2400 hours, which means 2400 hours is time taken. 800 hours which were earlier required now not required. So that becomes time saved. Time allowed will become 3200, that is 2400 plus 800. I repeat, time allowed will become 3200. 2400 time taken, 800 time saved, and because of that now time allowed will become 3200. My dear friends, what I'm trying to tell you is something pretty simple here. You will have to calculate time allowed because for row 1 bonus ultimately time allowed is needed, and because of that once you calculate time allowed you can calculate wages under all three. These are the points which I believe you should have remembered in question number 6. With that I finish my explanation of question number 6. Now let us move on to the next question, question number 7. Again, a very simple question provided you understand what they have asked. Let us first go through the details of this question. Mr. A is working by employing 10 skilled workers. This is very important line in case you just remember the question. A very important line, don't forget this one. Considering the introduction of HELSI, some incentive scheme, either HELSI or ROAN and so on and so forth, demand. The question says that employee productivity to cope with increased demand by 25%. Proposed incentive scheme should bring about an average 20% increase over the present earnings of the workers. Fair enough. Now what I'm trying to tell you is this. The next part is given to us very clearly that hourly rate of wages is 40, that is rate per hour. Average time for producing, this is time allowed. Number of working days in a month, etc., etc. You were required to calculate effective rate of earnings per hour under HELSI row 1. Fair enough. What I am trying to tell you is something pretty simple here, my dear friends. That to calculate effective rate of earnings, you require total wages upon time taken. For total wages, you require basic wages and bonus. Basically, they have asked everything in this question. Fair enough. Only place where you have to remember something is this, that to calculate time saved, again the same words that I'll use that I've been using so far. Time saved is a calculated figure. You require two variables, time allowed and time taken. Both must be for actual production. So now your actual production is 1250 units. Your actual production is 1250 units. So simple cross multiplication is what was needed, that if 1 unit will require 2 hours, then 1250 units should have been produced in how many hours? That comes to 2500, which this becomes time allowed, which then becomes time allowed for actual production. That you compare with the time taken for actual production. So now what you are told, worker works for 8 hours, individual work for 8 hours a day. So 8 into 25, because 25 days a month, and then 10 workers, So this used to come to 2000. Time saved is 500. Now you can calculate whatever you want, HELSI, row 1, doesn't matter. Whatever you want you can calculate, no trouble whatsoever. This is what was required in this particular problem. And second part says that calculate savings to Mr. A in terms of direct labor cost per piece. Piece means unit. So in this what you used to do, simple, find out rate per unit under schemes. Don't misunderstand rate per hour with rate per unit. Find out rate per unit under schemes. Find out rate per unit without schemes, which means your normal rate per unit. And then compare both. the difference will be savings per unit. This is what you are supposed to do in this problem. Confusion between rate per hour and rate per unit should not come. But then find out rate per unit under schemes, that is total wages you calculate under L01 and then divide by number of units, and after that what you calculate is your rate per unit without scheme, and then what you get is savings, if any. That is what was the point of question number 7. With that I finish question number 7. Next question, a very long question. It took lots of time to solve. Only point, rather multiple points, should I use the words, to remember is this. They have given various words. We need to convert that into our known words. So they have said that, I'll just leave the first para. It says ABC produced respectively these units. So this becomes actual production. And they produced in a normal day of 8 hours. This is time taken for actual production. Then they have said assuming day wages would be guaranteed at the rate of 75 per hour. This becomes your rate per hour. I repeat, this becomes your rate per hour. And the piece rate would be based on a standard hourly output. This is again nothing else but standard output per hour. Standard hourly output is standard output per hour. Remember, right at the start we did this formula for rate per unit, which said rate per hour upon standard output per hour. If you don't, I repeat, if you don't remember, go back in the video, drag it back, see the whole video at the beginning, and you will realize we have done this formula called rate per unit is equal to rate per hour upon standard output per hour. So here 75 is rate per hour, standard output per hour is 10, so 7.50 is rate per unit. This is the point which I wanted you to understand. There is no doubt about that. Such a question can be really important. But then again, we calculate wages under LC row 1 day wages. Day wages will be time taken into rate per hour. Day wages itself will become your basic wages in this question. But then you are supposed to calculate 3 workers' wages under 4 different schemes. Naturally, it will be a long problem. And last point to remember, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, last point to remember is that you are given time taken for actual production. You had to calculate time allowed for actual production. So it was a simple calculation. Let me take an example for A. So for A, I repeat, for A, in 1 hour you were supposed to make 10 units. A made 180 units. So that means he should have done, or he should have produced this in 18 hours. Accordingly, you can calculate time allowed for actual production. And that's about it, my dear friends. These are the points which I wanted you to remember, wanted you to understand. That's it. With that, I finished my calculation, or rather discussion, for question number 8. So now we move on to question number 9. Let me get that in front of you. Very easy question as such, to be very honest to you. Nothing great difficult calculations involved. But if you read the question properly, then, and you should also know what they have asked. Pay attention. See, this is existing incentive system. I repeat, this is existing incentive system, and this is, furthermore they say, onto system of payment by results. This is new system. Here they have given this basic time allowed for 15 articles is 5 hours, and for piecework they have said add 20% to basic piece rate, premium bonus add 50% to time. Existing system of alpha limited, beta limited, gamma limited, who's bothered, man? We solve the problem. Existing system is given first and new system is given after that, and then they have given that prepare a statement showing etc etc etc. Guys, try to understand. They have given to add certain percentage to piecework. They have given to add certain percentage to time. There is no logic. Whatever they have given, we do it and we get the marks. It's as simple as that. Okay, nothing great logic involved. Otherwise, you'll keep on hunting from where, how, etc. They have given the logic, we follow it. But wait. What I'm trying to tell you is something else. Wait. I'm trying to tell you is that this part is something which will assume importance. Like it says, assume that 135 articles are produced in a 40-hour week. 135 articles are produced in a 40-hour week. So 135 articles are produced. This is actual production. And it is produced in a 40-hour week. This is time taken for actual production. They have given these details after required, but if you are not careful, then you will miss out on these details and it will create a huge trouble. Otherwise, this, as I said, there is nothing great involved in the question. Like, this is time taken for actual production given. From here, you can calculate time allowed for actual production, then add the percentages, whatever they have given, calculate rate per unit. Everything is manageable, provided you remember these 2-3 points which are important from the point of view of solving this question. With that, I finish question number 9 and we will move to question number 10. Okay guys, so now we come to question number 10. The question says that standard hours for job X is 100 hours. Standard hours, nothing else but time allowed for job X is 100 hours. Job has been completed by so and so. These all are time taken. Then you are given the bonus system. Savings up to 10%, from 11 to 20%, and so on and so forth. Bonus is 10% of time saved, 15% of time saved, so on and so forth. Now, the points which I would like you to remember here is this, or rather are this. First, in this we are supposed to calculate bonus slab wise, in other words category wise. And second, the bonus that you calculate will be in terms of hours. The bonus that you calculate will be in terms of hours. For your benefit, I would like to do the calculation of Amar so that you can remember this particular calculation, and same calculations are repeated throughout the problem. But for that, I need to bring the board in front of you. Give me 1 minute, please. The board is right in front of you. Now, what they have given? They have given this way: time allowed 100 hours, time taken, naturally as I said we are talking about Amar, 40 hours, or sorry, shall I say 60 hours. Time saved 40 hours. Now, after doing all this, we are told that we are supposed to calculate percentage of time saved to time allowed, which means time saved upon time allowed into 100. So time saved is 40 upon time allowed is 100 into 100 is equal to 40%. What does 40% mean? 40% means that you have saved 40% of time allowed. That's the simple meaning. Now we need to calculate bonus. For that, I will divide 40%, 40 hours, both in different categories. So 40%, 40 hours. Let me divide it in different categories. Now, First category says savings up to 10%. First category says savings up to 10%, which means I'll write here up to 10%. So 100 hours into 10% is equal to 10 hours. What does 10 hours mean? It means that in this category you have saved 10 hours. In this category you have saved 10 hours. Now bonus. Look at the bonus in this category. It says 10% of time saved. So you have saved 10 hours. Bonus will be 10 hours into 10%, 1 hour. Next it says from 11% to 20%. Now out of 40 you have put in 10 here. Out of 40 you have put in 10 here, so that means you were left with 30% over there. Now another 10% you will put in here. It's as simple as that. So now again 100 hours into 10% is equal to 10 hours, which basically means that in this category also you have saved 10 hours. But look at the bonus. Bonus is 15% of time saved. So bonus is 15% of time saved. 10 hours into 15% is equal to 1.50 hours. And last, look at the category. It is 21% to 40%. So now I have 20% to utilize. Naturally 10 went here, 10 went here. So I'm left with 20%, which I can utilize. I'll utilize it fully. 100 into 20 is equal to 20 hours. I have saved 20 hours in this category. I have saved 20 hours in this category. Bonus. Check the question. It is 20% of time saved. So 20 hours into 20% is equal to 4 hours, and total bonus hours is equal to 1 plus 1.5 plus 4 is equal to 6.5 hours. Same way you can do it for Akbar and Anthony. That is what I thought I will remind you. I'll of course bring you back to the textbook, and with that I finish discussion of question number 10. So we completed question 10 and now I move on to question number 11. And the moment you look at the question, you would realize a very simple question, provided you remember the basics. First part of this question talks about the bonus to all the 4 categories of workers. First part talks about all the bonus to all the 4 categories of workers is what I would like to tell you, but then you have to understand bonus is on excess production. Excess production can only be calculated when you compare standard production and actual production. I repeat, standard production and actual production. But when I say standard production and actual production, what you need to understand is that standard production is 16,800 tons of 28 days. You can't compare that because the actual data is of 25 days. So you have to do a cross multiplication, that if 16,800 is a standard production of 28 days, then how much will be the standard production of 25 days? When you compare, you get 15,000. Naturally, you compare that with actual production of 21,000, excess production is 6,000. And that you multiply it with bonus, and they have given the various percentages in which you divide the bonus. Totally acceptable as a point. Do not forget the given data is not comparable. So what you do is make it comparable and then calculate excess production. Second part says that if the excess production is 20% above the standard, then bonus will be for all production in excess of 120% of standard. 20% above standard, 120% of standard, they both mean one and the same thing, man. They both mean one and the same thing. Excess of 120% of standard and the 20% above standard, they both mean identical things, no difference. You simply find out standard, which you already have, that is 15,000 tons. Take 120% of that, so 18,000. Compare that with actual production 21,000. Excess production, that is production in excess of 120% of standard, is 3,000 tons. Multiply that with bonus, and that will be special bonus to employee. Direct employee, should I add specific words over there? And then there is penalty for inspection staff, who are penalized if the rejection is about 2% of production, which means up to 2% rejection is allowed, very much allowed, acceptable. If the rejection is above that, then in that case you get penalized. So you take 2% of production, that is allowed. Compare that with actual rejection, that is 500, and additional 80 tons will be liable for penalty. Maintenance staff are penalized at 2,000 per hour for breakdown. Very simple, 40 hours are breakdown, and you multiply that with that particular 2,000 rupees per hour. Important point to note, penalties should be subtracted. Company will not pay you penalty by saying, oh, we hired you, our mistake, okay, please take penalty. Companies will not do that. You will have to subtract penalty while calculating how much amount is payable to every group. Interestingly, this is the question of group bonus. I repeat, interestingly, this is a question of group bonus, but it can also come under customized payment system. That's why it specifically appears over here in this book. With that, I finish question number 11. Please remember these points. Important question in my opinion. Now, guys, we move on to question number 12. And what was there in question number 12? I mean, there was nothing to do anything. Total wages are given, we are given day wages, that we calculate, so that becomes basic wages. The difference will become bonus. We are not given any ratio, so we decide to divide it in basic wages. There is nothing to say anything. With that, I have said everything whatever I wanted to. That's it. That was the whole problem. Yep, you heard that right. That was the whole problem. But then now I go to question number 13. Guys, please see the question. You are given time per article, grade of worker, which at present has no meaning to us, and wage rate per hour. We are told that factory works for 40 hours a week, production target is 600 dozens, and prepare a statement showing for each operation and in total number of operators, labor cost per dozen, total labor cost, etc., etc., labor cost per week, shall I say, to produce the target, etc., 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 etc. What I would like to tell you here is this, my dear friends, that I will try to explain you operation number 1. Of course, for that, I'll bring the board in front of you. Once the board comes, I'll solve the whole operation 1 same way you can solve all the other operations. But for that, you got to give me 1 minute. The board is right in front of you. Let us talk about operation number 1. Pretty simple scenario. See what we are told, that one article will require 15 minutes. And we are also told that we are supposed to produce 600 dozens. Now, this we all know. 1 dozen will have 12 articles. So for 600 dozens, we will have 7,200 articles, or in another words, 7,200 units. Now let us calculate total hours from that. So 1 unit will require 15 minutes, 7,200 units. will require 1,08,000 minutes, which basically translates to 1,800 hours. Now we have hourly rate with us, we have total hours with us. When we multiply, we can get total wages for the week, which they call it in this question as labor cost per week. So we calculate labor cost per week, 1,800 hours into rate per hour is 0.65 per hour is equal to 1,170 rupees. That is your labor cost per week. Let me make it a little proper. Okay. And now once we calculate labor cost per week, check the question. They also want labor cost per dozen. Pretty easy to calculate that one. Labor cost per dozen is equal to 1170 divided by 600 dozens. 1.95 per dozen. And they also want us to calculate number of operators, which is again a pretty simple calculation. The question very clearly says that the factory will work for 40 hours. Look at the line just below the box. It says factory works for 40 hours. So that means one operator will work for 40 hours. One operator will work for 40 hours. And when I say one operator will work for 40 hours, you have 1800 hours to work for. So when you do cross multiplication, you come to answer of 45 operators. All other calculations will be done in the same way. We can then create a statement, and with that I finish question number 13's discussion. So now we move on to question 14 and 15. For that I got to bring textbook in front of you, just a second. Yeah, 14 and 15, both of them dealt with overtime. Simple questions, nothing great as such to understand, but of course few points to remember as always. I'll just discuss that. 14th related to the calculation of overtime, 15th related to calculation as well as treatment of overtime. Let us discuss 14 first. The first part that you see, worker A, worker B, worker C, from there you will get your regular normal daily wage or wage rate per hour. Should I use very specific words? And naturally for overtime you will have to double that. Your total DA is 968, which is therefore total 176 hours in a month. We divided, we find out DA per hour, and naturally for overtime we double it. We need to find out overtime per worker and calculate normal wages and overtime wages for all worker. Remember that 9 hours per day, 48 hours per week logic, and then we calculate overtime hours, we multiply and we get the wages. As I just said, quite a simple question, nothing great to worry about. And in question 15, again as I said, you will have to calculate overtime and calculate treatment also. That is very simple. Calculation of overtime etc. was very simple. But when you talk about treatment, like for example, first part says that overtime is worked regularly throughout the year as a policy of the workers shortage. So that basically means that overtime is a regular time. You are just paying workers more, that is at a higher average rate. They call it as inflated rate, of course. Or the last part, if I may again take as an example, well, you are overtime is being worked at the request of the customer. So whatever you incur as overtime will fully be charged to him. Very simple two questions related to overtime, but important ones. Please try to understand that. With that I finish question number 15. Okay, so now we move on to question number 16, 16. When you see the question, you must first revise the concept of minimum wages, also known as guaranteed wages. Once that is revised, you would understand that you need to calculate two types of wages, minimum wages and plan wages, and whichever is higher will be paid. Now in this question, it was very clearly given to us that minimum wage is base rate. This means what? What does this mean? That base rate will be time rate, or in another words, rate per hour, because minimum wages are usually time basis wages. It is rate per hour, that base rate. So now every worker's wage rate will be calculated. That is Mohan, John and Harish. A point to remember here is that we have assumed that downtime hours are included in total hours. That is first point. Second, we are given that Mohan's wages are including overtime. So for 6 hours, we need to give overtime wages. Second point. Third point, what we need to understand is that for John, it is implied that 4 hours will be overtime wages. No one will tell you that. That you will have to understand on your own. So for all 3 workers, you first calculate minimum wages. First 2 workers, that is Mohan and John, are given straight piece work, that is SPR system. So their piecework wages also will be calculated. And then at the end, when it comes to percentage bonus plan, do not make a mistake of comparing actual units per hour with total standard units. You are calculating efficiency. Data must be made comparable, my dear friends. Don't forget to calculate standard production per hour. That will give you efficiency ratio, which you will then apply to base rate to calculate rate per hour under percentage bonus plan. And my dear friends, that is a most important point of this question. Otherwise, a very simple question. At the end, what you are supposed to do is that prepare a table which will give you a calculated wages part. Calculated wages will be 2, minimum wages and plan wages. Whichever is higher will be paid. I repeat, whichever is higher will be paid. We will compare that with book wages given in the last column. And then at the end you realize that only John's wages calculated are correct. So these points you must remember. A little longer problem, not too long, but a little longer problem. 3 workers, obviously 2 schemes for each. So these are the points which I believe if you will remember, this problem will become easier. Repeating once again, my dear friends, don't forget to calculate standard units per hour or standard production per hour so that efficiency ratio can be calculated in the correct way. With that, we finish question 16 as well. Okay, fine. Now, 16th question just got over. I will move on to question number 17. Now, before putting 17 in front of you, please try to understand. 17, 18 and 19, all 3 questions were on labor turnover. Easy questions, no doubt. But then they can ask anything in the paper at any time. So we have to study even this part properly. Okay. So 17th question, very easy question. Don't forget that we need to calculate labor turnover as per separation method and replacement method. Then of course flux method, that's a different point altogether. What we need to remember, we at the start take average workers, average number of workers, that's okay. But separation means what? Whether the workers leave on their own, separation, whether we throw them out, separation. So that both of them should be considered as separation for us. Next, replacement. Replacement means what? People hired in place of people leaving. Workers hired in place of workers leaving. See, the employees can join you, but then when they join, it's in 2 different categories. Either they are as a replacement of the earlier employees which were leaving the organization, or totally new joinees. Totally new joinees. We have to calculate it as per replacement method. So what we need to do? We need to calculate those employees numbers who are replaced and then calculate our labor turnover. Flux is nothing else but a combination of all the methods which are there in the question. So nothing great about it. When 18th problem comes in front of you, I hope you will remember it was a kind of a problem where you, after doing, actually thought, "Arey, what we had to do in this year?" And if you haven't done properly, then you will be thinking, "Arey, what we have to do in this year?" It's that kind of a problem. But then, few points to remember, please understand. First, the equation is at the beginning plus joined minus left is equal to at the end. First equation. Then second point which you need to understand. Left means separated. We need to calculate labor turnover rate as per separation method also. So left means separated. And whomsoever has joined you, we need to divide it in two parts. Joined will be divided in two parts, newly joined and replaced, because we have to calculate the labor turnover rate as per replacement method also. But then few more points to remember. Don't forget that as far as team leaders go, the question has clearly told you that all team leaders are transferred to subsidiary. There are total 60 team leaders. If all team leaders are transferred, which means at the beginning also there were 60, and at the end there will be no team leaders left in holding, no one will join to absolutely, otherwise we can't reach there. So this point you should remember, and this all joined and left etc. you can do even though a subsidiary company is involved, because the holding company and subsidiary company are maintaining separate set of books for recording these employees records. That is where we need to be very careful. If this statement would not have been given, then it would be very difficult to solve this problem, but it has been given wonderfully well and we are sorted with this problem as well. No doubt at the end you calculate the separated rate or replacement rate and flux, and you compare it with trainee executives calculated rate, and then you realize he was right. All things said and done, that table preparation becomes most important in this table or this question, shall I say. And with that I finished discussion of question number 18 and move on to question number 19. Very important question, multiple times they have asked in the paper. What we need to do is this, that they have given 4,45,000 hours in all. 30,000 training hours are given. We are told that half of the hours are unproductive. So we will take half of that, that is 15,000, and we will subtract it from 4,45,000, and we come to know that 4,30,000 are productive hours. 4,30,000 hours are productive hours, and then we do cross multiplication. 4,30,000 hours if you work, then you will manage to produce goods having sales value of 83,033,300. If you would have worked 1 lakh hours more, then how much goods we would have produced having sales value of so on and so forth. We get the answer of 19,31,000. We are given PV ratio of 20%. We multiply, we get 386,200 as profit loss due to labor turnover. Then there are these costs, which total is 1,13,800. You add that to 386,200, and total in all you get 5 lakh rupees. Manageable. Only point that I would like to draw your attention to is that there is a slight controversy where we took 1 lakh for cross multiplication. Some people also prefer to take 1,15,000. It's a controversial point. We have no choice but to accept this as a point which is open to interpretation. But we have to take one course of action, which we did. That is 1 lakh. And with that, we finish discussion of question number 19. Now we move on to question number 20. Very small question. We had to determine the total wages of the worker and treat it as per cost accounting principles. But don't forget, in this we had a concept of cost to company, that is CTC. We calculate total wages, that is CTC, of the worker, divide by expected number of labor hours. We get effective labor hour rate. We multiply that with job card hours, which are given right in front of you, and we used to get the total cost of the worker for a particular job. The remaining time is abnormal idle time, which we will put to costing P&L account. With that, I finished discussion of employee cost chapter. Wait, there is something which will come on the next screen, will please you really well. Just wait. That is something what I was talking about. This is the important point, or these are the important points, if I may use the correct English, for every question which is given in the textbook. So now you can see till question 5. I just adjusted the screen accordingly. Once you see this, of course the video will be with you, so you can actually drag back and see it anytime. This is first 5 questions. Then I move to 6 to 10, which you can see on your screens. Move next, move further. 11 and 12 now in front of you. Going to the next part. 13 to 18. You can always pause the video and keep on reading this. And of course, I would like to be invisible. And I'm back. And then the remaining questions, along with the grouping of every question, where each question falls part of which category, also is available at the end. You can certainly look at it at any point of time with all of this. So my dear friends, that's about it for this video. I thank you so much for your time, support and patience. We'll keep on meeting next time, certainly with some other topic. Thank you so much, guys.